Step into the captivating world of the Behind the Curtain podcast, where your dynamic hosts, John Dyer and Dr. Mohamed Saleh, bring together a wealth of 60 years of combined experience in healthcare and manufacturing. Join us every week as we delve into intriguing topics, weaving unscripted conversations that promise to take you on an unpredictable and enlightening journey. Gain valuable insights for your continuous improvement adventure as we navigate uncharted territories with enthusiasm and expertise. Welcome to a podcast that goes beyond the ordinary, unraveling the mysteries behind the curtain of knowledge.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Behind the Curtain. I'm your co-host, Mohamed Saleh. With me, my other co-host, John Dyer. And we're going to continue our series of Behind the Curtain, focusing on leadership character. Now, we've been talking about change from a big picture perspective, and really focused our attention on the importance leadership characters play. And so today, one of the characteristics that we're going to really dive into and unpack is the leadership's ability, or the leader's ability, to have clarity of vision, and being able to translate that for the organization. So, John, why don't you kick us off? What's your thoughts on that?
Actually, Mohammed, I love this topic, and I think that this is probably one of the areas that most leaders fall short in, is developing a exciting, motivational vision of the future for their organization. And it's not easy, right? It requires a lot of, deep thinking, a lot of information gathering, a lot of, sorting of ideas and prioritizing of ideas to come up with this vision of where we're going. But without the vision, then you're just treading water.
Yeah.
There's a great video that was produced by Joel Barker. Some people may know that name because of the videos he used to do on paradigms. Well, he also did one on vision, and it's a great way of explaining the importance of having a vision. And one of the quotes from that video has always really stuck with me. He says in the video, vision without action is merely a dream. Action without vision just passes the time. Vision with action can change the world. So I think too often organizations fall into that second or the first one. The action without vision just passes the time, the second one. It's like, hey, we just want to get through the quarter. We just want to make the month, the numbers for the month, or we just want to get out of the current crisis that we're in. And we're just passing time, and we're never really going anywhere. We're never really reaching for something new and different.
Yeah.
Whereas some organizations I've had the pleasure of working with that have started at the beginning saying, hey, our vision is tied to something dealing with achieving excellence, or being the best provider of a particular product or service to our customer, and really laying out what that means, bullet points of what that looks like and what that means. And it's amazing how much further those organizations are able to go in achieving true excellence than those that don't have that vision, or those that, and I've seen this happen, and this is kind of that vision without action is merely a dream. I've seen organizations where they'll spend, a couple of weeks as a leadership team coming up with this beautiful vision. And then as soon as they all agree that that's the vision, they put that whole notebook on the shelf, never to reference it again, and it's like, wow, that was a great exercise to come up with this beautiful vision of where we're going and never really doing anything with it, never doing anything about it. So again, that vision without action is merely a dream. So I do think this is critically important, and I do think most organizations do either a poor job of this or don't do it at all. What's been your experience?
Yeah, I find that the latter is more true. I think that and I'm using myself as an example, sometimes um, don't articulate with clarity um, what the vision is. And some of the things that happen because of that is we end up doing a lot of busy work. Um, and we end up, I had a story that I had said in a prior podcast, so I'm going to just say it again quickly, but it was talking about a man who was in London after a great fire that happened, and he was walking down the street and he saw a bunch of people um, uh, making bricks. Three men were sitting on the floor, all making bricks, and he walked up to the first one and asked him, "What are you doing?" And he said, "I'm making bricks." He said, "Okay." And then he walked up to the second person and said, "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm feeding my family." And then he walked up to the third person. He said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "I'm building a cathedral." And too many times, because we don't know what the vision looks like and don't have a clarity around that vision and the purpose behind what we're doing, we end up thinking that we're making bricks. And so not only do we end up doing busy work, but we're also very unmotivated.
Right.
And what ends up happening too is there's always these lack of alignment that happens with that. And so the person that's making bricks might call out sick a lot, might be um, disengaged to produce more. But if you have the vision, and if we even go beyond the vision here, that would be beyond the purpose of what that person was doing of building a cathedral. He was building a place where people could worship God. And that's the vision. Where the person that's making bricks is not inspired, unaligned, and unmotivated. So
Right. Now, and that brings up a very good point in that when creating this vision, it absolutely needs to be inspirational and exciting for everyone,
yeah,
for all of your employees, for your customers, for your suppliers, for your shareholders, for the executives. Everyone needs to see how they fit in that vision, and it needs to be motivational, like you're saying, to the point where people are like, wow, how do we do this? This is going to be so cool if
yeah,
we're able to pull this off, if we're able to achieve this. And everybody needs to see how they fit into that vision. So it can't be something like, you know, our vision is to still be in business in 3 years. So that's that's not very motivational. It's not very inspiring. Or our vision is to double in size in 3 years. That's one of the rules of setting a vision, is that it shouldn't have anything to do with financial goals or growth goals. Those should be the result of a good vision, well executed, right? So, how are you planning to double in size? What's your inspirational, exciting vision of growing the company? Um, but the actual growth should be the result of a good vision. So, it's not easy. There are a lot of things to consider when putting your vision together.
mhm,
Now there are several steps involved.
mhm,
Believe it or not, one of those steps is to, once the vision's created, usually by the leadership team,
mhm,
it then has to be um, bought into by the community, by the workers, by the customers, by the executives. And that's a step that a lot of organizations don't bother to do. So they say, hey, this is our vision, like it or not. And we expect you to help us get there. But if I haven't bought into that, if I haven't had any say in that, if I don't understand even what that means or what it looks like, then I'm just going to throw my hands up and say, "Oh, that was, yeah, right. I'm just going to keep doing my job until you tell me to do it differently."
Yeah.
So one of the examples I love to use when talking about visions with folks is John F. Kennedy's speech about going to the moon. A
Yeah.
lot of people don't uh, recognize that he actually gave two major speeches, and they were about a year apart. And the first one is the one that's probably the most famous, but it starts with, "I believe that by the end of this decade, we need to have put a man on the moon and safely return them to the earth." Um, Now, at that time, that was crazy talk because nobody thought there was any way to get to the moon. We didn't have the technology, we didn't have the resources, we didn't have the brain power. You know, half the world still thought the moon was made out of cheese. It's that kind of stuff, right? So we were very, very, ignorant when it came to this kind of stuff. But Kennedy spent the whole next year, 1961 to into 1962, selling this vision to the engineering community and to the financial community and to the American public. And then he gave another speech a year later, and it starts with, we will go to the moon by the end of the decade. So changed it from "I believe" to "we will," indicating that, hey, I've got the buy-in. I'm done talking about this vision. We're now ready to put it into action.
Yeah.
But if he hadn't taken that year to really sell it, to really get the buy-in, then I don't think it would have been nearly as successful
Mhm.
in implementing. But so that's again another step a lot of leaders miss is they say, "Oh, we're going to come up with this beautiful vision. We'll go off for 2 weeks, and we'll strategize and we'll develop this vision and put it all together, and then we'll have a big communication event and roll that out to all of our employees. We'll put it up on the walls. We'll put it on posters, and then we're ready to go." And it's like, no, you missed a huge step. You put the bones of a vision together, but it
Mhm.
still needs to be somewhat liquid. And then
Mhm.
you pull together all of your employees and some customer representatives and some supplier representatives and say, share with them, hey, this is what we're thinking. What do you think? And let them have a say in it. Let them have some input. And then go back as a leadership team, take all that input, and then come up with something that is more solid. And then when you do roll it out, you can say, hey, we took all of your inputs and we tried to incorporate as much as we could into this new vision. So now it's not our vision, not the leadership team's vision, it's the whole organization's vision.
I love that. I love that. We sometimes talk about the catchball process, and I think people that bi-directional uh, communication that happens up and down the chain, is sometimes misleading to one year's initiative. What we're talking about is the whole vision, because that huge vision, um, if done correctly and is everyone's bought in, we could create two or three large breakthroughs that will come from that. And those breakthroughs could be doubling your workforce as an output of that. That breakthrough would cause, maybe two or three or four priorities underneath it, which then would cascade throughout the organization. And so being able to have very clear, having this clarity in the vision, but then translate that into two or three large breakthroughs, And then those breakthroughs become, have one or two large priorities for the year. Um, then you could create that alignment in the entire organization so that everyone's rowing in the same direction. But if the spear of the head isn't clear and there's no vision, it's like swimming in the ocean without a destination. You're gonna
Right.
drown eventually. And so, like it or not. And so I think you make a really good point.
The one example that I'm familiar with, you mentioned cathedral, so it kind of popped this one into my head. But the largest United Methodist Church in the United States is called the Church of the Resurrection in Kansas City, and it started with 20 people. And the reason it's called Church of the Resurrection is they started in a funeral home, just 20 people. But the pastor there, who's now quite famous, he's written a lot of books. Adam Hamilton's his name, and he he really bought into this concept of creating a vision every 2 to 3 years. And so they started with 20 people. By the end of their first 10 years in existence, they were up to 1,000 people. By the end of their next 10 years, they were up to 10,000 people. Now they're up to 20,000 people, spread over several campuses. And again, the growth was never part of the vision, but they every without fail every 2 to 3 years they would come together and go through this whole routine like we've talked about, coming up with a vision and then selling it to the congregation, to the community, and getting that buy-in. So I'll give you an example, and again, this is totally unheard of in most organizations of any type. They built a sanctuary for their congregation, and it wasn't fancy. It was basically, it looked like what a gymnasium would look like if you had a slanted floor, tiered floor for seats,
Like a
right?
coliseum almost.
Almost, yeah, but it was boxy, and it
Yeah.
it it was rectangular in shape.
Okay.
So they met there during one of their periods of growth, and going from a few hundred to over 1,000 for several years. But they knew, because this was part of their vision, that this was temporary, that their vision was to use this as a
Springboard.
place to worship for a period of time, but then with the idea that they were going to build another place to worship, another huge sanctuary, when they reached certain points in their growth. Well, they did reach that point, and guess what they did? They filled this whole slanted area with concrete, covering all the seats, all that with concrete, and then turned it into a gym. So it became a multi-purpose room where they could play basketball. But
Oh,
so that was part of their vision. They understood that instead of just going for this and ending, no, no, no. This was one step towards a bigger vision that was multi years out, and nobody even batted an eye. In a lot of organizations, if a particular group of people are so used to a way of doing things, and then all of a sudden that's taken away from them, they just panic, and they're like, and then all of a sudden you have rebellion, and you have fallout, and you have a lot of strife. No, since everybody understood this was part of their vision, when they filled that with concrete, everybody celebrated and said, yeah, that we knew that was coming. That was part of our, long-term direction of where we're headed. And
yeah.
and it was like no big deal. So yeah, think about that, going from 20 to 20,000 members in about a 25-year period of time, all because they had tremendous vision of where they were wanting to go.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And I'm sure there's some healthcare organizations that do what I'm about to say, but it's rare. But sometimes the vision of a healthcare system is to create a healthier community. Well, like creating a healthier community, it actually is going to reduce volume to the healthcare system.
Right.
And so it's almost counterintuitive, but you see organizations that preach about having healthier community, and they start promoting healthy eating. And so you'll see them in supermarkets to promote certain healthy eatings. They'll promote gym memberships and give part of the insurance plan is free memberships for to go to the gym. They'll promote frequent preventative measures that will come to your house to make sure that you have a healthier lifestyle. They promote walking versus driving. They'll start promoting things that if their vision is to get that, they could be actually producing many new products out of this. And yes, they're going to have to give up some of the main core businesses that they do today, which is bringing them revenue. But if the vision is to get there, that might just be one step that is needed for today that tomorrow might no longer be a viable thing. And so if I'm someone who's thinking from a healthcare perspective, yeah, I'm looking at my, ER as bringing in revenue right now, but my goal is to prevent people from coming to the ER. So I have to start diversifying my product lines, so that as I start going towards that vision, I have new breakthroughs that could give these people a healthier lifestyle so that they don't need to come to the doctors at all.
Yeah. Now, see, and I think this is why it's really important that increasing revenue or growth is not part of the vision.
Yeah.
Because think about that, right?
Yeah.
If they had a vision of making more money,
Yeah.
then it may then drive them to do some pretty unethical things, like how do we make people sicker?
Yeah.
How do we keep the emergency room completely full all the time, because that's our biggest revenue generator? So we're going to actually go out and start causing accidents to happen, or we're going to start, getting people to eat unhealthy.
And then you'll have a
Versus,
bigger ER room, and how do we grow our ERs so that we have more space and so that we can produce more revenue?
right, exactly. Versus saying, how are we better customers to our community?
Yeah.
Well, our community doesn't want to be sick. So how do we help them not be sick? But then that may free up some resources so that when there are emergencies, we can do that even better and faster and respond quicker, because we're not so inundated with, a lot of unhealthy people.
Yeah. And that breakthrough might be like putting a man on the moon. And so, how do we keep a person, at home for an entire year without getting sick? That could be a vision. Like, how do I keep someone healthy for an entire year without being sick? And
Right.
what are all the parameters of keeping them home and not being sick? And then that could result into actionable steps. But I think from a leadership characteristic standpoint, being able to have such a clear vision is such an underutilized skill, I would say.
Absolutely. I agree.
So
Well, next week we'll talk about how do we turn that vision into strategy.
absolutely.
So we hope to see you again next week.
All right, everyone, have a great day.
As we draw the curtains on another fascinating episode, we wanted to express our gratitude for joining us on this enlightening journey. If you're hungry for more captivating and thought-provoking discussions with John Dyer and Dr. Mohamed Saleh, hit that subscribe button to ensure you don't miss a beat. Until next week, keep exploring, stay inquisitive, and stay inspired. See you on the next Behind the Curtain adventure.